On this episode of China Uncensored, to know the future, you must understand the past? Hi, welcome to China Uncensored. I'm your host, Chris Chappell. If you've been to any Chinese restaurant in the United States, you've been served a fortune cookie. A lovely little saying, some lucky numbers, maybe it teaches you a word in Mandarin. Yes, fortune cookies are a beloved Chinese restaurant tradition all around the world. But why can't you find fortune cookies in China? In fact, the ancient art of fortune cookies was nearly lost forever. It was a dark time in China's history, one that few people even know about. So today, we bring you a China Uncensored exclusive investigation into the secret history of the fortune cookie. The origins of the fortune cookie stretch back to the roots of recorded Chinese history, the Shang Dynasty. In a grand ceremony to determine the fortune of the nation for the coming year, the emperor would toss oracle bones into bronze ding vessels that would then be lit. A mystic would interpret the cracks that formed on the bones as predictions for the future. Clearly a feudalistic superstition. That's why during the Cultural Revolution, when Mao Zedong began destroying the Four Olds, a systematic campaign to wipe out traditional culture, he targeted the fortune cookie.
That was the official reason Mao gave for the Confucius Smash the Cookie campaign, but actually there were much more sinister reasons behind it.
Dr. Iris Woolsey is one of the world's foremost experts on fortune cookies.
So after the Shang emperors, it became a folk tradition. People started putting their own spirit tablets with fortunes and charms written on them and steam rice cakes to celebrate the Lunar New Year. And whoever ended up with a cake with a tablet would have good fortune for the coming year.
Unless they broke their teeth.
Well, at a certain point, they switched to paper.
But for Mao Zedong, fortune cookies were more than just feudal superstition. They were also political. During the late Ming Dynasty, the making of fortune cookies became part of esoteric rituals, dominated by secretive clans with occult practices rooted in geomancy, feng shui, and fortune-telling based on the Bagua and I Ching. One of these clans had a charismatic leader who convinced his followers that he had divined the will of heaven, and the will of heaven was for him to become emperor. That led to the Le Zaohua, or Happy Good Luck Uprising of 1629, and later the 1633 Changfu, or Everlasting Fortune Rebellion, which they most definitely were not. Both rebellions failed, but they greatly weakened the Ming Dynasty, and they were partly responsible for the dynasty's collapse and conquest by the Manchus in 1644. So it's no wonder that in the 20th century, Mao Zedong was afraid the fortune cookie could threaten his rule. At least, that's the accepted scholarly interpretation. But it turns out there might be more to the story.
No, that's totally wrong. That's not why Mao turned against fortune cookies at all.
I went to Manhattan's Chinatown to interview Fong. He's a 7th-generation fortune cookie master from the Southern Hargao School. His was one of only a handful of fortune cookie families that left China before the Cultural Revolution and have carried on the tradition overseas.
I've been making fortune cookies for nearly 40 years.
You don't look that old.
My mother put a fortune cookie in my hand before I learned to walk.
His fortune cookie factory now supplies nearly 1/4 of the Chinese restaurants in the United States.
Mao was a secret believer in the power of fortune cookies. That's why during the Chinese Civil War, when the communists were fighting the nationalists, Mao had his troops use fortune cookies to deliver secret messages between revolutionary cells. He believed it was the fortune cookies that helped him win the war.
But according to these memoirs written by Mao's doctor, Mao later became obsessed with fortune cookies, especially after several predictions proved eerily correct. You mean the fortunes were accurate?
Yes. One fortune Mao got read, "When metal is depleted, the earth will become weak." That's based on the 5 elements theory. Earth generates metal. The 5 elements theory is a profound skill that Chinese people use to predict the future. From this perspective, Mao was using a skill that he didn't completely grasp.
According to Jing, Mao thought this prediction meant that unless he increased steel production, the Earth, or China, would be weak and vulnerable to foreign invasion. So, during the Great Leap Forward, he drove the entire population into steel production. Even in rural areas, entire forests were leveled just to fuel the furnaces. But it was all a waste. They couldn't get the temperatures high enough, and so the metal was brittle and useless. In fact, that was one of the contributing factors to the Great Famine.
When metal is depleted, the earth will become weak. 30 million people starve to death. The earth element correlates to the stomach.
Whoa.
There were other fortunes too. The entire reason Mao blocked Zhou Enlai from getting treatment for his cancer is because of a fortune cookie predicting that if Mao died first, Zhou would take over his legacy.
And that would be Zhou's face up on Tiananmen today. Wow. I am really impressed with the history of your art. So, I was wondering, can I have one of your fortune cookies?
Knowing the future can be a burden as much as it is a gift.
I'll take my chances.
Yes. Enjoy.
You will have the #1 show on YouTube. Oh, wow. Oh, wait, there's more. Visit Learn Chinese Now for the true meaning. And thank you for watching. What do you like most about fortune cookies? And if you comment below, no spoilers, please. Once again, I'm Chris Chappell. See you next time. Okay, so for the real story behind this episode, here's my friend Ben Hedges from Learn Chinese Now.
愚人节, that's how you say April Fool's Day in Chinese. So, when an elementary school student tells his teacher that the principal wants to see him in his office, and he actually goes there to find out that it was all fake, 愚人节. That was me that pulled that one, by the way. When the BBC tells you that spaghetti grows on trees.
The last 2 weeks of March are an anxious time for the spaghetti farmer. After picking, the spaghetti is laid out to dry in the warm alpine sun.
Yep, it's 愚人节. Or when you see a video that says traditional Chinese fortune cookies were suppressed by the communists but preserved in America, it must be 愚人节. Sorry to break the illusion, you guys really believe that, didn't you? But Chris, the communists did suppress a lot of stuff. I mean, American Chinese food uses a lot of broccoli. That's surely one of the cuisines that was suppressed during the Cultural Revolution, right?
I wish the communists had suppressed broccoli. It's the bane of a good General Tso's chicken. Anyway, if you like humor and want to learn some useful words in Mandarin, click here to go to Ben's channel, Learn Chinese Now, where you can, learn Chinese now. He uploads new awesome videos every week.
Remember that joke about what if Chinese people got lame English words tattooed on themselves? Well, it's happened.
Good news, everyone. In a world laboring under the shadow of terrorism, China has the answer.